Welcome to Insidious Inc. Tonight's story isn't just about a haunted Airbnb, it's about a place that doesn't want you to leave. You check in for the night expecting a cozy stay, a comfortable bed, a warm atmosphere, or maybe even a peaceful getaway from reality. But what if the house has other plans? What if no matter how many doors you lock, something is already inside, waiting for you? This is the true story of an Airbnb guest who experienced something so terrifying, they barely made it out. At first glance, the place looked normal, a little older than the photos had made it seem, but nothing that screamed, "Don't stay here." It was a 2-story house, tucked in a quiet neighborhood. White walls, dark shutters, and a wraparound porch that groaned under my weight as I stepped onto it. The paint was chipping in a few places, and the windows, tall and narrow, were covered with thick, heavy curtains. I had booked the Airbnb for a quiet getaway. Just a few nights to clear my head. No hotels, no noise, just me, a book, and silence. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. The air was heavy, stale, like the house had been sealed up for years, suffocating under its own silence. It smelled faintly of dust and something else, something I couldn't quite place. I noticed little things that didn't feel right. The furniture was arranged in a way that felt unnatural, almost staged, like a set piece in a play. The couch was positioned at an odd angle. The dining chairs were slightly pulled out, like someone had just been sitting there. And the floors, old wooden planks that should have been still, groaned softly beneath my feet, even when I wasn't moving. The sensation crept up my spine, a slow crawling unease, like the house was breathing. And the worst part? No matter where I stood, no matter which room I entered, it felt like I wasn't alone. My room was on the 2nd floor, at the very end of a long, narrow hallway. The wooden floor creaked with every step I took, the sound stretching into the silence like a whisper. The walls were bare except for a single framed photo, an old faded picture of the house itself. The first thing I noticed when I reached the door was it had no lock. That detail wasn't mentioned in the listing. I ran my fingers over the doorknob, feeling for any kind of latch or bolt, but there was nothing. Just a smooth, worn handle, cold to the touch. The wood around it looked slightly discolored, as if a lock had once been there but had been removed. A small thing really, just an odd quirk of an old house. But it made my stomach twist. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. It's fine. It's just an old house. Not every door has a lock, right? Still, when I climbed into bed that night, a thought slipped into my mind. A thought I couldn't shake. What if someone tried to come in? The idea made me unsettled, more than I wanted to admit. I forced myself to dismiss it, pulled the blankets up to my chin and tried to push the unease away. I was just being paranoid. But as I lay there in the dark, the feeling didn't fade. It got stronger. I was being watched. I could feel it. Sometime deep in the night, I woke up with my heart pounding. At first, I wasn't sure why. The room was drenched in darkness, the kind that felt almost solid, pressing against my skin. No headlights from passing cars. No wind rattling the windows, just total silence. Then, creak. A long, drawn-out groan of the floorboards. My breath caught in my throat. Someone was in the hallway. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, as if whoever or whatever was making them wanted me to hear every single step. I held my breath, my ears straining. Each footstep sent an icy prickle down my spine. One step, then another, closer and closer, and then the footsteps stopped right outside my door. The air felt thick, unmoving. My body screamed at me to do something, to reach for my phone, to hide under the blankets, to breathe, but I couldn't. Because as I lay there, frozen in the dark, I heard something else. Something worse. The doorknob turned. I stared at the door with my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then the handle moved. Just a slight turn. A slow, deliberate shift of metal. Not enough to open, just enough to let me know that someone was there. I held my breath, frozen in place. Maybe it was just the wind. Maybe it's the house settling. Maybe my imagination is playing tricks on me in the dark. Then, it turned again. This time, harder. A sudden, sharp shock. The scraping sound of metal against metal. My stomach tightened. Someone was trying to get in. I jumped up in bed, my pulse pounding so hard I thought I might be sick. Then, rattle. The doorknob jerked violently. Whoever was on the other side was testing it, pressing their weight against the door. My mouth went dry. I wanted to scream, to make any sound, but my voice was trapped in my throat. Another sharp jolt, but this time it was harder and more persistent. I braced myself, waiting for the moment the door would burst open. Then, silence. The handle stopped moving. And then the footsteps. They walked away. Slow, measured steps, retreating down the hallway. I stayed, frozen, barely daring to breathe, listening to the creaks fade into nothingness. But I didn't feel relieved, because even though the footsteps were gone, I could still feel eyes on me. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence, unsure if minutes or hours had passed. Every shadow in the room felt like it was stretching toward me. But as the first pale sliver of daylight crept through the curtains, the crushing weight of the night finally started to lift. Finally. It's morning. I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't staying another night. I barely remembered throwing on my clothes. My hands trembled as I stuffed my belongings into my bag, shoving everything inside with reckless urgency. I just needed to leave now. My breath hitched as I hurried down the stairs, the old wooden steps groaning beneath me. The house felt heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves were leaning in and listening. When I reached the front door, I grabbed the handle and twisted, but it wouldn't budge. I froze. I tried again. Locked. Frowning, I flipped the deadbolt, the same one I had locked the night before. The mechanism clicked, but when I turned the knob, nothing. I jiggled it harder. Still nothing. The lock was jammed. Panic surged through my veins. I rattled the knob with both hands now, yanking, twisting, trying to force it open. But it was like the entire door frame had shifted overnight, trapping me inside. This isn't happening. This isn't real. My pulse thundered as I stepped back, scanning the room, looking for another way out. Maybe a window, maybe... Creak. The blood in my veins turned to ice. From upstairs, in the hallway, the footsteps came back. Slow and deliberate. I don't remember unlocking the door. I don't remember how my fingers managed to work the latch when, just moments before, it wouldn't budge. I don't remember running to my car. But suddenly, I was outside, barefoot, breathless, the cold air burning my lungs. All I remember is the feeling. I noticed something was behind me, waiting for me to look back, but I didn't. I never did. I fumbled with my keys, yanked the car door open and threw myself inside. My hands shook so badly it took 3 tries to start the engine. The moment it roared to life, I sped off, never looking back. I didn't stop driving, not until I was miles away. When I finally pulled into a gas station, my pulse was still racing. I checked my phone. A message from the Airbnb host. "Why did you leave so early?" Another text popped up. Checkout isn't until 11. My fingers hovered over the screen, unsure what to say. But before I could respond, one final message came through. By the way, who was that with you? Some Airbnbs feel cozy. Some Airbnbs are peaceful and quiet. And some have never truly been empty. If this story sent a chill down your spine, subscribe to Insidious Inc. for more terrifying true encounters. And if you've ever had a haunted Airbnb experience, tell us in the comments. Because sometimes checking in is the easy part, while checking out, that might not be up to you.